Hi guys and welcome back. Firstly, thanks to my subscribers. It's much appreciated you taking the time to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, in the bottom right hand corner of the video image you can see a little Jeep icon. If you can click on that, you can subscribe to my channel, and that'll keep you updated with my videos about Jeeps and the various things we're getting up to. Got quite a few things to be getting on with this year, which should be quite good, so I should be putting out a good number of videos which hopefully you'll find interesting. But as you can see, we've got the GT86 back in the garage, which is good news. Had it out of the way there because the Jeep working on the transmission and transfer case, but now that's all done, I can fit them both back in the garage, which is great, so the GT86 doesn't need to sit outside getting covered in bird poo and everything else. But what we're going to be working on then is the something I talked about in an earlier video, and that's a distributor on the Jeep. So when I first rebuilt the engine, the distributor was okay. It needed some work, which I did. I tried to keep the original rotor to see how that went, and that worked okay, but you can rock the rotor around now, and the paint's starting to peel. I didn't put a primer on the outside of the distributor body, and unfortunately the paint has started to peel off there as well. So really, you know, along with the transmission and things like that, I'm working through making the Jeep perfect, really, rather than pretty good. So I don't want to be driving around with this distributor which isn't properly happy. So we're going to whip that out then, guys, and have a look at rebuilding that and see what we can find. Hopefully it should be fairly straightforward. Online people say rebuilding them's okay. Looking into it myself previously, you know, it seemed to be okay. So let's get it out of there and have a look at it and see what we've got. I'll tell you what, guys, I've got to sort out somewhere to put in my tools. I keep them inside these old Luftwaffe World War II tool chests, but trying to find tools in here is near on impossible. So, yeah, I think if you're working on Jeeps a lot and things like that, you really need to have your tools sorted out properly so they're easily accessible. I spend most of my time digging around in here looking for the same tools all the time, whereas if they're in a nice tray, I could easily get at them. So there's a top tip for you. So guys, we've got him out then. It's quite easy to do. Just got a 7/16 and a half-inch bolt you need to undo, and then you can just pull it out. Unfortunately for the guys who have got rusted Jeeps, we've said previously, this is the surface area here which contacts inside the block. If you've got rust on here, you can see it's a massive surface area to rust into your block. So if it is rusted in, it can be a huge pain getting that apart. So it can be done. You can put a gator grip on here and chains and things like that and rotate it. You know, you work it backwards and forwards until you can get it out with a bit of heat and penetrating oil over a long period of time. They do come out, but I think they can be a huge pain. So unfortunately, that's something you guys who've got rusted blocks have got to deal with, and there's no two ways around it, I don't think, unfortunately. What we've got then, we've got NOS, apparently NOS from these guys, parts kit here, so hopefully that's going to be good. We'll see how that all goes together. I don't think everything needs changing in the distributor, but we've got all the parts, so we might as well do it. They're not expensive. But the distributor itself, you can see here, it's got my paint that I did on it, which is flaked off because I didn't put a primer on it, so unfortunately that's just come off. But you can also see the label then is the original paint on that. I didn't strip that, I carefully painted around that, and that came out nicely, so I'm pleased with that. We'll try and do that again. But the distributor itself, I don't think is terrible. The shaft then, there's some up and down movement. I couldn't feel any sort of wear in the bushings or anything like that, so I think that's okay. And then on the end, what have we got? So here's the rotor. Let's try and hold the shaft. There's a bit of rocking in there. Pull that off. This is the IAD 4008, the late dustproof. So we get this guy off. There we go, with the condenser and the points. Somebody had changed these previously, I'll change them again. And down in the centre here is a wick and a little spring clip which we've got to remove. So let's get taking this all apart and see where we end up. So guys, we've got the top portion off, which is not particularly difficult to do. There's two screws and the screw which holds this post here onto the post on the outside. So it's in there, and then you rotate it round till you can get that like that, and then you can just pull it up and this whole section comes off, which is great. So nice and simple then, so that can all be sorted. This is what we've got underneath then, is the weights and system down here, which changes the timing with centrifugal force. So as you're going at higher speeds, the timing is altered due to these weights spinning out, because this can rotate against these weights backwards and forwards. And the issue I have then is I've got quite a lot of vertical play on here, which you're going to have to look at. I did speak to somebody and they said it's quite common for them, but I'm not entirely sure about it. So we'll delve into that and we'll see what we can get. So guys, we moved on a bit now. As you can see, we've managed to do quite a lot here. So that paint came off really easily, unfortunately, which was good. I had to be very careful, of course, to keep the original paint on the tag, which is not so easy when you're trying to remove it all. But fortunately, the paint hadn't adhered well, so as I said, so it came off really easy. The more difficult parts are on the arms here, and they came off with acetone. You've got to be careful with pure acetone because it removes paint really, really well. But unfortunately, it will also remove all the paint that you don't want to remove, like this here. So you've got to be careful with that. And then one of the other issues with taking these apart is this little spring here, this guy, who goes on the top here and holds the cam on. So when the cam slides down, it sits on and it's held on by this guy. Now this is very difficult to access because it's at the end of this shaft, okay? It lives inside there. So when it comes to it, you need some pliers. Now pliers like these, unfortunately, just aren't good enough to get in there. You can't get them in, so you need a pair of fisherman's pliers, something like that. Ones with very thin snout, which you can easily get in there. It's not really worth doing the job if you haven't got the correct tools. I attempted to do it and had great difficulty, but it can be done. But I really would advise that you get the proper pliers for that. So how have things gone otherwise then? Pretty well. As you can see then, these are the old bushings here. These were pretty oversized. They were like 25 thousandths of an inch over 0.5 of an inch, so they were oversized then. The shaft itself has got, if we pull him out, he's got light scoring marking. You can see the difference between, that's where it goes up to half an inch there. That's the bit which hasn't, where it hasn't run, and these are the bits beyond where it has run. It's about less than 5 thousandths of an inch difference between them, maybe. And as we push it in, then we can see it tightens up as you hit the bit which hasn't run in the bushings before, and then it goes smooth as it goes through the first bushing, and then it hits the second bushing at the bottom. There you go. It's gone through, and then it's in down at the bottom there, and then it rotates nice and freely, actually. Not too smooth, not too tight. Now, if you've got a shaft which hadn't got any wear on it, you'd probably need to ream the bushings then, so that's an added issue there to half an inch. But this one here, because of the wear on the shaft, or the slight wear on the shaft, I would say that the bushings are probably actually slightly oversized. So what that's done, it's taken up the slack, so I don't need to ream these bushings, because look, we can rotate it pretty easily. It's not loose, but it's not really firm either. It's just about right, and there's absolutely no wobble in there. There was a slight bit of wobble in the old bushings actually, but these ones are really good. So look, if I push it up, it rotates easy, but if I push it up to the unworn portion, there you go, it binds up. So I'd have to ream that. You can see it's not bad, but I'd have to ream it, whereas the worn portion rotates just about right. Not too loose, not too tight. So I'm pretty pleased with that. So the bushings are just, there's one here, you just push him out the bottom, here he is. So from above, you just, with a brass drift, you just fire him out easy. And then there's one above as well, and he goes out the top. So there's a gap in the middle, if you imagine it, like that. There's a gap in the middle there with nothing in it. Now, the important thing about the top bushing is that it has a hole for an oiler, okay? So the oiler is there, it sits like that. So you need to make sure that your bushings won't have, they'll look like this guy. They won't have a hole in them. So match it up. Mark it up, drill a hole to match there, and when it comes to putting it in, push him down to the correct position and make sure that the hole there lines up with the oiler, otherwise you'll never be able to oil these bushings, and of course that is a very bad idea there. So very important to drill that hole out. But otherwise, guys, it's gone pretty straightforward, really. These came out all right. They went back in, as I said. Bonus, I don't need to ream it due to the wear on the shaft, or slight wear on the shaft. It's just enough to match it perfectly. So, yeah, it's gone pretty well then. So the next thing then, guys, is to get onto painting and also work out what these extra bits are in here on this rebuild kit. I'm not entirely sure. There's the washer. There's the thrust washer. So you have a thrust washer at the bottom there where it sits on the collar. But I've also got this guy here, and this guy as well. So not entirely sure. And a wick. So we'll have to look into that, guys. Look in the manual and find out what those extra bits are. It hasn't rained in 2 weeks or so, and the second that I attempt to do a bit of spraying, it starts a downpour. There you go. So guys, it's all back together now. As you can agree, I think it's looking pretty good there. That's the VHT paint with a primer on this time, so an actual proper base for it, so it's not just going to flake off. Unfortunately, I did this, 4 years ago now, and it was one of the first things I did on the Jeep to get it to run. So I didn't do a perfect job of it. So now we've come back in, well, we've gone forward in time and we've doing it correct this time. We've got it all together. Took a bit of masking there to make sure, as I said, to keep the original paint intact. Then you have to mask off these portions as well because they couldn't be painted. And I didn't want to obviously remove these, so you've got to mask around it. It's not easy. And then the oiler and put in the new posts there. But what happens then is the shaft comes down from above, and what we've got then, you've got a lower thrust washer there, so you push him on and then you push the collar on and pin it. But before you do all that, when the shaft is out, you have a upper thrust washer, which is this guy here, and he sits just about there, I suppose, and he sits on the shaft there, so you drop the shaft down with him in it, and it's underneath there, and that's the upper thrust washer. So there's 2 thrust washers in there, okay, and then you have a cam spacer. There he is. Over here. Here's a cam spacer. It's got a chamfer on one side. For some reason, the chamfer has to go down. I have no idea why. I don't know why there would be a chamfer on it or why it has to go down. But the chamfer goes down, and then you put on the cam. Now, it's important the cam goes on the right way round here, okay? Because as we know, on these drives, there's a fat side and a thin side. You can see there's the thin side on this side, the fat side on this side. Now, if you imagine, if you have the fat side up, okay, so when it's down in the Jeep, the fat side is now up, what you have then is the cam has to be so that the rotor points to 3 o'clock. So for us to do that, that would have to be like this. So we've also got a spring here, a little retention spring there, and that stops this chattering on the weights here. So when you put him in, you can see how he's sitting there. You put him in like that, and then you catch him. So you can do it. You catch him there, and you twist him round like that. Okay, and then if we put our rotor on, should point to about 3 o'clock. Okay, so fat side on top, rotor points to 3 o'clock. That's correct, because obviously you could put this on 180 degrees out, and this would point that way, and that would mean your timing was 180 degrees out, which is a big problem. So you don't want that. Okay, so oh, excuse me, you're on the move. So now this is all on and this is correct. We can put on the little clip here which goes down the centre and holds it together. Okay, so yeah, mine was missing this cam spacer for some reason. I have no idea why. We'll see how much difference that affects. I imagine it's been taken apart at some point and that's been omitted. So that's hopefully going to improve things a bit. We've also got this felt wick here, and I believe this should go in the oiler. I'm not sure how you get it in the oiler, as it's quite large. But I believe it goes in the oiler, this one, and oils into the bearings, and then you have the top one. When it's all done in, you put him on the top as well, and you can drop drops of oil on there to oil down the centre. But yeah, that's it as it stands at the moment, guys. Pretty pleased with that. We'll get it all, continue to get assembled, get a new condenser fitted and the points on, and hopefully it should all be good. So guys, here he is all back together. We've got everything in now. It's got a new condenser from Joe's Motor Pool, new cap from Joe's Motor Pool, it's got new points, all sorted out. The felt's not in the end yet. We'll put that in a second when we've got made sure that it's happy and it's all running and everything. And I've gone for all the brown rotor and cap because that's what the guys at Joe's Motor Pool have. I'd have liked to put the black one on there for the 4008. I know there's some sort of conjecture online about which one's correct, but I think, in my personal opinion, I prefer the black on the late distributor. So let's give this a start and see what we can get out of it. I put a bit of grease on the cam like you're supposed to, oiled the oiler, put a drop on the governor pins and also on the distributor on the breaker pin as well there. It gives it to you all in the manual about how to lube it all up, but hopefully this should run all right then. So guys, here we go. We had a bit of an issue with it then. I think it was just the distributor bedding in really. The rotor from Joe's Motor Pool, unfortunately, it didn't seem to like. There was a bit more play on it than the original rotor. It's got the original rotor back on it now, but it seems to be ticking over very nicely. I've just taken it up the road and heated it all up, and this is after bringing it back when it's warm. But I think I can feel definitely, it feels more sprightly and more powerful at speed actually. There's more, you know, about 40, I can still put the accelerator down and get a whole load of extra power out of it if I want to. So I think it's definitely made a good improvement here. So I'm pretty pleased with that really, guys. It wasn't a particularly difficult thing to do. So, you know, if you haven't done it to your one, I would recommend the distributor rebuild really. It seems to be a fairly straightforward job to do. You know, you can have problems with it, and this has taken a little bit of time to sort out. My starter decided to give up as well, unfortunately. The brushes have got stuck, so I had to take that all out and everything. But now it's running, seems to be nice taking it out and about. I'm pretty pleased with it really, so hopefully that's given you a little bit of insight into that. And yeah, if you like that, like and subscribe. Cheers.